And today we have Darwin Millard coming to talk to us on our Cannabis and Reflections podcast. My name is Cary Black, and the show is produced by the Cary Black Group, a consulting group in quality and a lot of aspects of the cannabis industry, as well as the sports equipment industry. Anyway, we invite people to come on the show, people that are movers and shakers in the cannabis industry. And I can't think of a more prolific individual to have on as Darwin Millard, also known as the Spock of cannabis. And I've had the chance to work with Darwin on previous consulting engagements, and very few people in the industry as astute and as well informed as Darwin. Darwin is on the executive leadership board for ASTM D37, particularly has strong leadership roles in D3707, which is standards related to hemp, and D3704, standards related to cannabis processing. So anyway, Darwin, it's a great honor to have you here, and thank you for your patience with the technical difficulties we've experienced. And I'd like to welcome you and maybe hear some of your perspectives on where we are with the cannabis industry right now, where we're going, and why we should go there, and basically provide us some sort of general perspective of your thoughts on that.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Cary. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my perspectives today with yourself and your audience.
Thank you. Well, so that being said, I know we had a little recording conversation, and I know that you put a tremendous amount of effort into an ASTM standard regarding international symbolism as it relates to consumer products of cannabis. And I wonder if you want to share a little bit about that and the ultimate importance of that kind of effort to the industry.
Sure, yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. I've been, I guess, over the last few years, about two, really focusing my volunteer effort with the ASTM Technical Committee D37 on cannabis, and trying to harmonize and create a set of label content, style, format, prominence, and location of elements specifications, so that if you were to pick up a consumer product containing cannabinoids in one marketplace, say somewhere in Europe, like Germany, or you might pick that similar type of product up in Canada or the United States or another legal marketplace, you would see similar information presented in a similar format in order for that consumer to make an informed purchasing decision. And kind of stemming from that effort, the members of the D3704 on processing and handling, which is one of the 13 subcommittees now underneath the D37, decided that it would be a good idea to standardize and go through the harmonization effort of creating a single universal symbol, quote unquote, so it could have like a true universal symbol, since
right.
I'm sure yourself and many of your listeners are aware, there are many symbols, at least in the United States alone, for that marketplaces use to identify consumer products that contain cannabinoids. Mostly they're concerned with those, the THC, intoxicating cannabinoids, and other things that presumably cause risk to consumer health and safety. And then there is, of course, Canada's symbol. And so what that group decided to do, which was led in collaboration by Dr. David Nathan from Doctors for Cannabis Regulations, and Martha, last name starts with a B. I really apologize, Martha. We'll make sure. Sorry, what was that, Cary?
I thought Martha Bajik, isn't it?
Yes, thank you, Martha Bajik with HCD Research, and she does sensory analysis, consumer analysis, programming, and study of how to do consumer surveys. And what her group did was actually help us, along with some of the other volunteer members, create a symbol that we took from other standard features. So we used the ISO standard triangle for the ISO standard warning triangle. So the triangle used and seen in many standardized warning signs according to the ISO standard. And then we used the ANSI, the ANSI standard warning yellow, which is kind of that yellow-orange off color as the background for the symbol. We made it a 2-color symbol for ease of printing. And we ended up creating a standard feature for identifying cannabinoids, which is the cannabis leaf. So we actually created a standard cannabis icon, which is the leaf, which actually sits within the center of the triangle. So it's a nice yellow triangle with a black border and a black leaf inside that. And some people might be thinking, well, what happens if I print it on a black package? Well, that's when you would actually add a small yellow border around the black border just to accentuate the black border. And it is technically not a part of the standard symbol in the respect of the ISO standard triangle, but it is a accentuating element that's used to make sure that you can see the standard on a dark background.
Understood. And maybe later you can shoot me some images of those, and as the video's running, I can kind of roll those through as you're talking about them for the finished production part of it. I think it'd be cool. And I know it as also an executive member of ASTM. It can be sometimes really challenging as we're creating standards, and it seems to be fairly anthropocentric to the United States, even though its objective is to be an international committee. And in the development of this international labeling standard, I imagine you had a pretty good international crew of stakeholders that were working with you. And what were, I guess, hearkening in that process, what were kind of some of the challenges that you might have faced relative to sort of, a more nationalistic perspectives of what it should be or what's been used there, and the coming together of the group as a whole to finally resolve down to the ISO triangle approach?
Yeah, it's a great question. So actually, we solicit a lot of feedback from our members. We had different ideas for what could be the icon, whether just an exclamation point, the letters THC, the leaf, a combination of some of those. And what we had determined or gotten back from our evaluation from our various international members was that the letters would need to be translated in certain marketplaces. And so it wouldn't be a standard symbol in that respect, because if we wanted to use the letters, for instance, THC, those would change in marketplaces that don't use, for instance, the English language.
Right.
So that was kind of, so we started to move away from including things like the THC. There was also a very strong desire to move away from things like the stop sign that Canada uses, because it didn't want to convey the improper negative connotations that a stop sign does to the consumer. And instead of being a halt, a no, a don't do this, it's more of a warning. Again, we wanted to make sure that the imagery, the icon itself, conveyed the correct message to the consumer, which brought us back to kind of either the diamond, the warning diamond that the Global Harmonized Standards uses, or the ISO triangle. And I don't remember the exact debate that might have been had there, whether we flipped a coin to go with one direction or the other. It may have been political to just give throw the ISO a bone, perhaps. But either way, the triangle was chosen. And then actually from there, it made it pretty easy. The team had already gotten a lot of feedback from various printing people and label designers that, multiple colors, such as the Canadian symbol, which is a 3-color symbol, makes it very expensive when printing a lot of these symbols or labels, with the symbol on it. So, because each color is a different pass with the equipment. Therefore, that's again why we went with a 2-color. There was a lot of potential about making it a single color and having a clear background or some element of it transparent. But that was kind of moved away from when we started doing mock-ups on fake products and things like that, and could see that for when used on cartridges and other things like that, being transparent, it actually detracted away from the visibility of the symbol. And therefore, we didn't want to do that. So we went back to eventually, I guess, settled on a 2-color print for that. Another interesting thing actually from our various international stakeholders who participated was not all countries have warning signs. And so when we asked, what was the warning sign used in your country, or what's the standard symbol you associate with a warning, some people basically said that they didn't have one.
Oh,
so
wow.
that was interesting, right? To learn that, like you've said, in North America, Canada, US, we have some very strict, I guess, warning signs that are laid out in different places, right? And so it's very common for us to kind of associate the triangle with a warning sign, since that is, in fact, what it is here in the US, right?
Oh,
So that was very interesting, and all of that, like I said, kind of culminated into the development of adopting the triangle. And then when it came to the colors, that one was a little bit easier, given that there's already a standard color for warning, and the other standard colors that are actually approved via ISO for symbolic, symbolage, iconography, that type of thing, were like green, blue, white, and those didn't express the level of warning that we were trying to get.
I see. And I think that's fabulous. I know in the process of writing standards, a lot of times different international perspectives can become rather daunting, and trying to get disparate perspectives aligned together to create a standard, that can be probably one of the most challenging things that I know I've had to deal with in some of the standards I've written. But I really applaud your efforts with the international labeling standard. I see it not only as a provider of information for consumers, but in another way, and more philosophically, a way of bringing the industry together on an international level, which can only be helpful to the success of it when the whole industry is kind of operating around a global perspective that really adds a lot of positive elements. And I can just make the analogy, if you look at the explosion of high-end Dr. Deming-based quality practices at Toyota that were fairly exclusive to Japan, how those practices now extend globally, and the overall improvement of that auto industry that has exploded just from those original efforts. So I know that's a complete different case, but philosophically, I see a relationship there. And
100%, the point is well taken, right? I mean, our industry is finally maturing. And I think actually we have a member on our D3707 hemp fiber initiative that's hopefully trying to create some test methods. Awesome. So that people can actually have a internationally harmonized set of test methods for determining things like length, strength, width, cohesion strength, moisture content, basic properties of fiber, right? That would be a concern to buyers and sellers of these goods.
Sure.
So, we have a member who kind of continuously mentions that we know that an industry has matured when the lead chief science officer, the lead engineer of of every company in that industry is a member of that leading standards development organization. And in his particular opinion, it was ASTM for a number of different industries, which I know you probably agree when it comes to flooring, roofing panels, or some of the other committees that you've worked with in industry, right? Where ASTM standards really are the bread and butter standards, for the ones that people use.
Oh, completely.
They're not necessarily like the ones that you might put on your shiny web page that your ISO blah blah blah, your NSF this or something, right? Because those kind of associate to your quality metric, your branding is perhaps, right? But damn well use them in your buyer and seller agreements in that contract, right? That doesn't necessarily see the light of day, right? You're going to reference, well, I'm going to buy these, this many tons of raw fiber. Well, it needs to meet these specifications, and I'm going to use these test methods, right? Or I'm going to contractually obligate my supplier, right? Or in the agreement that I'm going to validate your materials via these methods. And that has major power and consequence.
Oh, I agree. And ASTM has, I'd say, is still a pretty good ways to go in increasing the number of analytical test methods that can be deployed. And in fact, the industry as it stands now, I think is negatively impacted by lack of really fundamentally universal analytical test methodology. And you can see that in round robins where you have the same sample and you get the same amount of different results, basically. It's hard to turn apples into apples when all you have are apples and bananas, and different test methods to do the same thing are banana and apple producers. I guess if maybe that was a poor analogy, but I know the point is we have a tremendous amount of opportunity to extend our test methods out to a global perspective, and hopefully we'll see that emerge. And now I'm gonna shift gears a little bit.
Absolutely. I think there's a
yeah, go ahead, Don. I
was just going to say, Cary, that I agree with your statement, and I think we can see we're moving in the right direction with organizations like the AOAC. I think that's the American Organization for Analytical Chemists,
right,
which has developed a tremendous amount of test methods as well, is looking to re-collaborate with the D37. And we initially kind of started together and then kind of branched apart, and now we're coming back together again. And I think that kind of speaks to where you were, what you were alluding to with the maturity of the industry and the maturity of the standards development effort, and the collaborations that we're building through ASTM and with other standards development organizations.
Yeah, I hope to see that alliance come together and bear fruit. It's not 100% prolific across the AOAC organization yet, and it'd be good to see that relationship improve and the level of collaboration improve. Now, on another note, we're obviously in kind of a weird state in the United States with the sort of differential legal status, and how that is sort of intricately linked with the rights of the states versus the feds and so forth and so on. Do you have an idea or a perspective on the full legalization process for the federal government of the United States? Where you see we might be going? And the reason I asked that, Darwin, is I'm seeing more and more acceptance from members of Congress on both house and both the Senate and the House. And my feeling is it may be a more short-term event that full legalization occurs. And I know that your interactions with people may have led you to the same conclusion or different conclusions. And I'm curious as to what your thoughts are relative to that.
I think we're closer than probably people think. Yeah. I don't know how close.
Right.
I agree that the tide has well turned. The only reason we don't have national legalization yet, or even decriminalization, right, is political. That's it. You know, the way that our bifurcated two-party system works, it's just, you've got incompetence on one hand, you've got greed on another, right? You've got all sorts of different interests at play. So I think the ship has well sailed that legality should happen and will happen.
We just got to clean up all the messes first.
Yeah, it's like who's going to skin what cat, who's going to get what piece of what pie, and which political party is going to actually muscle up and make things happen. So the Democrats seem to be ineffectual, and the Republicans seem to be just focused on culture war things as normal. So it's like, what are you going to do, right?
Yeah, right.
If one party, when they have control, won't do it, and if the other party, when they have control, don't want to alienate their most extreme of members who also donate quite well, then you kind of just get stuck with nothing changing until perhaps someone is willing to just step up and take the political fodder, so to speak, and push it through and make it happen. I think we have more than half the states, so theoretically it doesn't even need to be enacted or right. It could be a straight up and down vote by the states themselves. Could actually call a continental Congress or whatever, something like that, right, and take a vote of the states just straight up and down on a legalization. Since we're more than half the states, and it's something like that, some mechanic. I don't know anything about politics.
Well, that's a very interesting notion. But really, at the end of the day, I think that idea, and we talked about it, hit it on a couple of different theme points in this talk, as we define and standardize, and as the standards become global and more accepted, the whole process becomes more global and more accepted, and the safety for consumers becomes greater. And politics at some point, I think, will become irrelevant as the industry matures and as the industry's standards, as the practices, let's just say, I think the influence of politics will be decreased. And I think the Senate just had a vote here, just like a matter of weeks ago, maybe it was last week, where, and it was unanimously approved to open up all the doors to cannabinoid research, and like THC, any other cannabinoid, all the cannabinoids for medical research, which before was a bit problematic, at least certainly in certain states where you couldn't really do research on high THC level medical applications. And opening this door is just it pulls another cog out of that wheel on the path to legalization. So I'm happy about that. And that was 100% approved in the Senate, unanimous, which in this day and age really says something with our current government, I think. But anyway,
no, I mean, we are headed in the right direction. That's for sure, Cary. And I think, politics within, certain marketplaces in regards to legalization is one thing. politics within amongst stakeholders within the industry is a wholly other. And
Agreed.
I fear those politics is really what will be, which will delay and interrupt the standards development process. But of course, yeah, that's opinion based. I think it's my opinion. Yes, I think as being a member of a 120 plus year old standards development organization that prides itself on producing highly relevant, technically accurate, scientific standards, that's what our standards should be for the cannabis industry.
Oh, agreed.
They should be scientifically accurate. We should use scientific terminology. We shouldn't be afraid that plant is called the cannabis sativa L plant. That's the name of the plant. Oh my God. Ooh, that sounds scary. Just call it that. That's what it is. And I think what happens, right, is you get hung up with the word cannabis, which is an interesting word, because it's not every day that a single word can be used to typically refer to the plant, or a part of the plant,
right.
Or sometimes even a product, right? And that's where I've been starting to use consumer products containing cannabinoids. That makes it easier.
That
right?
defines it. Yeah, and somebody's going to push back. At any rate, Darwin, we've run out of time for our discussion.
Oh no.
I really appreciate your thoughts and reflections, and I'll keep you posted as this is massaged into a final product and let you know when we post it. So
sure, and I will make sure you get all the latest on the universal symbol.
Oh, good. Yeah, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off the recording, but I'm not going to sign off on you. So just stand by for a second.